Welcome back to Inspired Afternoons. And of course, we started off on a really good note with our health, which I think is very important. But it's also about, showcasing people that are making differences in other people's lives and uplifting and empowering. And the month of Ramadan allows us to do that through reflection and reconnection and retrospection. And the reason I use these three words because they're so important in our lives to be able to help others and help our own beings and our spirituality and move ourselves into a better space as far as our spiritual being is concerned. So today we're going to be showcasing a really amazing individual. Let me tell you about her. She's a facilitator and an educator, an anti-apartheid activist, and the COVID pandemic forced her to become a community activist. She's part of the Tenants Association of Robertsham and was, of course, forced to stop people from being illegally evicted. She was successful in protecting members from eviction. They did that by informing members of their rights and the tenants empowering them to protect themselves. Members are mostly women headed households. They also organize food, medicine, water, blankets, and loads of other things for those people that are in very serious need. So this afternoon, I would like to welcome Aysha Raja onto the show. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A very warm welcome to you.
Wa alaikum salam. Assalamu alaikum to everybody. Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Mubarak from myself and the team. We're hoping you have a blessed one. It started off on a really good note. Shukr, alhamdulillah, from compared to last year, from last year to now. I think it's given us that rays of hope that we've been looking for.
Absolutely.
Talking about rays of hope, Aysha, I think you're one of those little rays of hope that we look for in communities in order to be inspired, to be able to empower and uplift people. And this is the reason why we wanted to showcase you today for the phenomenal community work that you've been doing. So let's start off by talking to us literally about yourself and your journey and how you got involved in wanting to be a community builder, and then, of course, an activist, and then realizing where your purpose really is.
It started actually when I was 13 years old. And
wow.
Yes, that was in 1976 during the uprisings in schools. Mm-hmm. But more than that, it was a personal journey. As you know, it's some things we don't want to talk about in our community.
Right.
What touched me was looking at the domestic worker in our own house and realizing the loneliness of this person who was basically living in our garage.
Wow.
And, you know, and this is the reality for many, many women in this country, in that they actually end up looking after everybody else's children but their own.
That is so true.
Yes, so, it was this sense of there really should be justice. And this fight against apartheid was really a fight for humanity.
Yes, most definitely. I agree with you there. I mean, at the end of the day, it was having to look, and this is what makes people like yourself humanitarians, with the humility that you have, to be able to understand that each one, irrespective of creed or color, is a human being, and the manner in which they live is important. Of course, also having to understand that we would like to have our lives easy, having better lives, and having things run smoothly. But what about the types of spaces and places they're in, and having to move them forward in many a direction?
Absolutely. We either all going to move forward together, and this means that every human being should have human dignity. It is ridiculous, Nafeesa, that in this day and age, that people are going hungry. It's just ridiculous. And that is before the pandemic. I know the stats were something like 12 million I
Yes.
can only imagine
Well, to
why
tell you,
we in
Aisha,
this
it's actually
pandemic.
gone 100-fold worse during COVID, having to speak to many other NPOs throughout our period here. It's actually very scary. It's something that I think that was there all the time, but has gotten 100-fold worse during the COVID-19 period. And to see what people are going through is actually it's very disappointing. It's saddening. It's very heartbreaking, knowing that we're having 3 meals a day, and others are not even having one.
Absolutely, Nafeesa. But the Ummah has been there, helping. I'm just going to quote what happened at the Boyson's informal settlement. But
Sure.
this is where the rub comes, Nafeesa. The rub comes. We have this unfolding human tragedy happening where people living under the most horrendous conditions. That whole settlement burns down. Immediately, everybody reacts. A
Right.
lot of Islamic foundations come forward and they help, real help that people need. But the fact of the matter is, now we are gone. Now we are gone. Those people continue to live under those, it is really horrendous conditions. So and in that time, I am sure that millions was put together in the form of aid for those people. But that is only a short-term solution.
For sure.
And really what we must now start looking at is how can we intervene so that we can have long-term solutions to
Oh, I
these
so
problems.
agree with you. I think you make a lot of sense by saying that, and this is what I say time and again, because I also get involved with NPOs in trying to uplift and empower people. And what I say is, let's not just feed them. Yes, it's imperative for them to be able to eat and have those meals, but what about long term? Trying to hook up with government, making them understand the plights of these people, bringing it to the fore, creating the awareness, and saying what is it that we as a united front, community, society, as well as government, can put together to be able to better these people's lives. Because, I mean, they don't even, a simple thing like during COVID-19 right now, they talk about hygiene, but we don't talk about the access to the water. How do they get it in order to, of course, maintain the hygiene? Because they're in an area where it's not readily available.
Absolutely, Nafeesa, you've hit the nail on the head. And what I'm proud about, and I'm really proud of all the members of the Tenants Association, even though we call the Robertsham Tenants Association, we have membership in Turfontein, Boysons, Southdale. It is amazing what we can accomplish if we give people information.
Oh,
So
most definitely.
basically all we did really was to say to people, these are the laws. This is what the Constitution says about housing. This is what the Rental Act says. This is what the PI Act says. And in this way, we empower people to protect and defend themselves.
All right.
Um, we don't have a problem with landlords. We have a problem with illegally, the way you treat people. And right now, Nafeesa, I have just seen it, I think 3 days ago, government is talking about the IDP, the development plan for our region, which is Region F in Johannesburg. And I
Correct.
think it is very, very important for all of us now to start looking at the documents. You see, I don't care who is in power. I think as citizens, we must be very aware of what the laws are. What I'm thinking about is these IDP plans are for 5 years. Firstly, we don't even know what happened in the last 5 years.
Right.
But They're saying that as communities, we have to be involved in drawing up these plans, in looking at the draft plans. On paper, Nafeesa, it looks wonderful. It talks about empowerment. It talks about removing spatial apartheid. And that is
Right.
very, very important, Nafeesa. Government crows about the fact that they are delivering housing. But the housing that has been delivered, Nafeesa, are these what they call mega housing projects. Now, where are these mega housing projects? These mega housing projects are not where people are living,
Right.
working, worshipping. It is not near mosques. It is not near churches. It is not near madrasas. It is, they are thrown so far away where you can't access, as you said, you spoke about access to water when you talk about hygiene, transport. I mean, how do people access all of these things if they are thrown onto the outskirts of Johannesburg? Nafeesa, I want to be controversial if I may.
All right, we'll give you a space. Let's hear.
And suggest the following. Having worked in this area, Nafeesa, there are actually a lot of buildings. These buildings are being bought up. And let me just state very clearly for the listeners, I am not xenophobic. Africa belongs to all of us. But worryingly, what has happened is that there are these so-called investors, Nigerians, Ethiopians, coming and buying huge blocks of flats. And the minute they buy it, they start proceeding with eviction against our members. Now, if government is serious, there are these buildings. Minister Lindiwe Sisulu promised 660 million rand in rental relief to help people that have been affected by COVID.
Yes.
Our suggestion then is, Nafeesa, 660 million, giving it to individuals. I'm sorry, we live in a country where I can see lots of things go wrong in terms of disbursement. Who is going to get and who is not going to get? And we know that we have a disease in this country, and that disease is corruption. So, an alternative, and speaking about long-term solutions, buy the buildings.
Exactly. I agree with you there. I had an idea in mind, which I wanted to actually bring to one of the NPOs, was take these buildings, turn them into little units for these people, as opposed to them having to live in a shack with absolutely no dignity, because the type of appalling situations that they live in is actually really scary. To think they have no access to water, they have no access to hygiene, they have no access to food or anything for that matter. So I came up with the idea of saying, look, there's so many containers laying around, these huge containers that they use to transport things. If those containers are not being used anymore, why not incept that and turn them into little modular units where you find a vacant land and make up these modular units for these people that will, of course, have access to sanitization, sanitation, and as well as to the hygiene and the water, and of course a dignified way of living for them, where then you give them a space in front of their modular unit where you teach them to farm, and then they can sustain themselves to some extent, because what's happening is they're then going to get those vegetables and their daily food supply without having to put their hands out. And the ideal that I see that you're talking about long term is about creating these types of environments where we create self-sustainability and self-empowerment. But it has to come from help, of course, initially, because that's not something they can do on their own. So it's having to give them a kickstart where you then, as you say, go into a long-term beneficial solution.
Absolutely. But on the other hand, Nafeesa, you know, people are so resilient. So resilient. I don't know, because I am not in that situation. I don't know what it is, but how people keep life and limb together is quite amazing. So, you know, us assuming also that we are coming to show you how to survive. No, 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 no. I think the Nafeesa people can teach us a thing or two about community and survival. And I can tell you that many of us, had we not had this community, this sense of community during the worst time of the pandemic, we would not have survived. It's that building of
Course.
a
It
community.
was that support structures and those Ubuntus, each one came
Absolutely.
together and everybody did something for somebody else. And I think that was amazing to see. And I think that's what grounded us as people. It made us humanitarians. It created this humility within us to say, ground yourself, see what is happening around you, and understand the types of situations other people are in and reach out. That's what it did. It was an awakening that for many people, for society as such on the whole. I think it's imperative that we work together in a united front to be able to create better communities. But I also think, and I don't know if you agree with me, Aisha, very quickly, because we don't have too much time left,
Sure.
would you agree that it starts within your community itself as well? So having to maybe just reach out from your community to those that are around you and say, what is it that they require that we can all get together as a community and help each other build each other up, as opposed to waiting for something to happen from the higher level?
Absolutely. And you know, that you really, Nafeesa, that is the crux. Had we not come together as a community, by now, I can tell you, people would have been out in the street. They would have been evicted.
Most
But
definitely.
because we came together first as neighbors and then as a broader community, we were really able to protect and defend ourselves. So you absolutely hit it on the head. And yes, Nafeesa, and really we should talk about this idea of food gardens. There is a lot of land in our areas which we can put to use. You know, this I've seen, you know, next to your studios.
Yes.
I got some wonderful soil from there, by the way. My
All
plants are
right.
very happy.
Oh, wow.
Um, but really, coming together as a community, for example, your container idea, your idea around food gardens, absolutely support Nafeesa. And we
Most
really should
definitely.
work together in this
Oh,
area.
that was the message of the day. Is, I mean, it is such a blessed month. It's such an auspicious month, and it's a month of giving. And why not start now? Because we talk about wanting to build up. Now is the time in the month where we follow in all those sunnahs, but we also realize the types of situations people are in and ask ourselves, how can we empower them? Because that's what it's about. It's about empowerment. And when you
Absolutely.
empower somebody, you've done something for them for life, because they're not going to be standing there waiting for handouts all the time. And I think that's what people need to understand. And that's where we're getting at today, is help us empower so that we can create sustainable people that they themselves can go out and empower others.
Absolutely. And I just want to echo what you have said, empower people to help themselves.
Most definitely. What
Absolutely.
message would you like to leave us with this afternoon?
Um, have a blessed Ramadan, everyone. Let us build our community. Let us free ourselves from our biases. It's very, very important that we begin to see people created in the image of Allah. Let us recognize that. We cannot be partners with the Almighty and stand in judgment. Let us go out there as a ummah and let us empower and help people and everybody have a wonderful, blessed Ramadan.
Thank you so much for
Jazakallah.
joining us. We wish you a blessed Ramadan from myself and the team, and we hope you do reach those endeavors in some way. But you, of course, have our support as well. And we're hoping that all the communities have learned something from you today by saying, let's get together and create a united front. You take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum.
Aysha Raja talking about community building, which I think is absolutely important, and of course, creating that self sustainability, which I think is something that we really need to look at. We're going to go for a quick break. We'll be back with you in a sec.